Now we come to how you handle feedback or question time. Obviously, first off, you might want to sort of be thinking through what questions might come. That might, of course, give you some ideas of how you might want to modify your presentation so that you make sure that you answer those questions in your presentation. But there's bound to still be some questions that they have. So if you can guess what they might look like, that helps you to not be quite so flustered when the question does come. You have to let them know, are you going to take questions and handle things as you're going through your presentation so that they can ask a question of clarity right there and then, or should they save their questions up and you handle them all at the end? You need to tell them that. So now you've got to the end of your presentation, it's time for receiving questions. And you want to manage that question time. So you need to let the audience know, how do you want to handle the questions? Are you going to collect questions throughout, or collecting all the questions at the end? If you want questions to come, it's actually best to not simply ask, do you have any questions? Because if you do that, you get questions about all kinds of things which may not be on your topic. So instead, try asking, what questions do you have about such and such? And it could be the title of your presentation, or what questions do you have about my presentation? Something like that, something that's very focused, that helps to narrow in on what it is that you're wanting the questions about. Of course, sometimes the questions don't come, and if sometimes that's just fine. Okay, no questions, great, move on. But sometimes you have a time slot that you need to fill, and actually you want some questions, you want to generate a little bit of discussion, and in which case you could say something like, well, at this stage I'm often asked about such and such, and then you could go on and answer that, and in that way you've tried to sort of show them it's okay to ask questions. Okay, so questions are now sort of coming, and you need to receive those questions. Do you want to receive one question and you answer it, and then the next question you answer it, or do you want to take a whole lot of questions, you make some notes, and then you answer all of them in one go? It's up to you. You have to decide, but you have to communicate it to them so that they know. As you're receiving these questions, show them real respect. Look at the person, make eye contact with them. Even if your body is still facing the bulk of the audience, you can still use your head and your eyes to look at the questioner. Even if you feel that this question is coming from an unfriendly angle, still show them real respect. Listen carefully to what they're saying. Do not embarrass them. And of course, you don't want to waste any energy by answering the wrong question. So instead, try to clarify if you need to. Maybe you could say something like, okay, have I understood you correctly? You want to know about da 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 da, yeah? And that actually shows them respect, because it shows that you really do care about their question, and it also buys you a little bit of thinking time. Of course, maybe their question contains some error. Maybe they're deliberately wording it in a certain way, which is not actually correct, in which case you want to correct that and move on into the answer at the same moment. Sometimes you'll find that the audience didn't actually hear the question, so you can repeat it using the microphone, or because you're at the front facing them, it's easier for you to repeat it. Again, it's another way of buying a few seconds just for your brain to think over that question. In fact, many people actually recommend repeating the question. Even just mulling it over out loud, saying it out loud, is quite valuable, because as you slightly reword it each time as you repeat it, you can slightly reword it so that it fits with how you want to tackle the answer. And if you really need to buy further time, then you can zoom in on somebody who has asked a difficult question. Maybe you could say, that's a very interesting question, but it is quite broad. So which aspect of that would you like my thoughts on? And now you've turned the table back to them, which then buys you some more time for thinking, and they actually have to think. They have to compose a real question, not just ask something big and broad just to look clever. Sometimes the questions that come are loaded. They are deliberately to try and make you look a little silly or to make them look clever. Don't rise to this. It's an emotional battle. Don't get involved. Just force yourself to relax, calm your voice, drop your shoulders, answer their question, move on. Just be confident. Sometimes you need to pause and say, a bit of silence is not going to kill anybody. It also reminds them who is in charge, because actually you're still the one who is on the stage. But do watch your tone and your body language. If you are defensive or aggressive, everybody will see it. They will be watching it, particularly if a very pointed question has come. They're all going to have their eyes on you, and they will see exactly how you respond. So be very careful. Prepare for it. When you do answer, make sure that you look at the questioner. But then as you start to answer them, you can then move on to then also look at the audience, so that you are then answering everybody. And once you have moved on, once you have answered that question, move on and then just talk to a different person and say, okay, does somebody else have a question? Just don't ramble. Okay, of course there are going to be some questions that come that you just can't answer. You don't know what the answer is. Well, that's okay. Maybe you can answer a part of the question. You can do that. Maybe there's somebody else in the room who is better qualified. Hey, Jack, you know the answer to this one. Come on, tell us, how would you handle this question? Or maybe instead of giving them an answer, you could explain what you're going to do in order to find out an answer. Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't know the answer, but I will find out for you and I'll come back to you. It's okay to say that you don't know. That actually shows a great deal of maturity. It's not an embarrassing thing. It actually teaches a valuable lesson. It is okay not to know everything. So those are questions that you cannot answer, but sometimes there are questions that you can answer, but you don't want to answer. Maybe it's confidential. Maybe it's something that you're wanting to keep back. Maybe you just don't want to answer that question. If you've got a solid answer, maybe this is the right opportunity to give it, but if not, there are ways that you can deflect. For example, you could say, that's a great question. What does everybody else think about this? What do you think about this? And by doing so, an answer is coming out, but you are not having to voice it, so you can keep quiet. Or maybe you can give the politician's answer. That's a very interesting question, and behind it there's actually this bigger issue, which is such and such, and I'm going to tell you all about such and such, and you've now moved on to a different topic. It's actually completely valid. Or it could be that you say, look, I'm really sorry, I don't think I can give you a complete answer whilst we're here. Maybe we could talk about this afterwards. And you can deflect in that way and say, come on, just the two of us, we can talk about this afterwards. Is there anybody else who has a question now from the group? Or of course, sometimes you get questions that really don't need an answer. They are rhetorical questions. They are questions that people have posed simply to say something themselves, but it's not actually a question that needs an answer. Well, if you do get such rhetorical questions, actually, the best answer? Very interesting idea. Does anybody else have a question about what I've been talking about? Yeah? Just recognize, okay, yeah, that was an interesting thing that you've said, but it wasn't a question. Does anybody else have a question about this? Yeah? or you can say, yeah, good thought, and just move on. Next thing. Or maybe it is something that you can briefly answer and promise that you'll answer it more fully in private after the session ends, something like that. Or it could be that you say, that's a great question, but before I answer it, I wonder if you could help me out. Why did you ask that question in that way? That's really quite a stumper. That will make them think. But of course, you only pull that one out if they're really trying to embarrass you. Yeah, so enjoy question time.